we are going to be discussing algebraic terms. So algebraic terms are expressions that have addition, division, multiplication, and division, right? So let's define what like terms are. Like terms are terms with the same variables or letters. For example, a plus a, if we're doing the addition, it would give us 2a, right? Because a and a are the same term, like terms, right? Hence we add the coefficients here, which is 1, we add them and they give us 2a, right? Same thing for x plus 2x, right? The terms are the same, right? So that becomes 3x. But be careful, x plus 2x squared is not the same, right? The two terms are not the same because the powers, the exponents here are not the same. One is 2, the other one is 1. So it just becomes the same thing, right? And this is the answer, right? Let's do a few more examples. So for 4y plus 5y, the answer would be 9y, right? Let's do one more example with a bit more terms in it, which is 9x squared plus y, not plus, sorry, 9x squared y squared plus 8xy plus x squared y squared, right? The answer would be, so the first thing we look at the terms, which one are like terms. So we have x squared y squared and x squared y squared here, right? So the coefficients are 9 and 1 respectively, which when we add give us 10x squared y squared, and we have 8xy, which just remains the same, right? And now let's do an example that includes fractions, a over b plus c over d, right? How do we deal with this? Now the correct way of dealing with this is, what happens is you multiply the two, you multiply this 2, and then you add them to the multiplication of these two, which let me show you, which is a multiplied by d, right, plus c multiplied by b, sorry, multiplication sign, multiplied by b, right, divided by, now how do we do with the, how do we find the denominator in this case, right? So the denominator is just the multiplication of these two, right? That's how you get the denominator, right? So the denominator becomes BD, right? Now the answer is AD plus CB all over BD. This is the answer, right? Now let's deal with multiplication and division, right? So when it comes to multiplication and division, we need to first deal with the signs, right? The signs that come with the coefficients, right? How do we deal with that, right? So what you need to know is that with multiplication and division, so a positive sign multiplied by a negative sign, right, gives us a product with a negative sign, right? So when you multiply a negative sign and a positive sign, which is the same as the one above, gives us a negative as well. When you multiply a positive and a positive, gives us still a positive. Now when you multiply a negative, right, and a negative sign, we get a positive, right? So this is very important. all of these. This is very important when it comes to multiplication. You need to know the products of the signs, right? Now let's do an example of multiplication with fraction, right? One example is a over b multiplied by c over d, right? This gives us an answer of, so what you do is you multiply the numerators and then you multiply the denominators, right? The answer becomes AC over BD. This is the answer. Now let's do division. Let's do a division example. A over B multiplied by, division, supposed to do division, divided by C over D, right? Now the trick in here you need to know is, if you're dividing something, right, by a fraction, you can change the multiplication, the division sign into a multiplication, and then inverse the two, right? What I mean by that, if we switch the division to a multiplication sign, then we have to reverse these two. We need to swap these two, right? Now it becomes what? D over C. And then the answer becomes AD over BC, right? So this is very something really that you need to really understand to use really well, right? Now let's go to an example of multiplication with using the distributive law, right? So distributive law is used in this kind of scenario, where there's brackets and there are terms inside the bracket that you need to that need to be expanded. So distributive law dictates that the value in front has to multiply both of the values in the brackets, right? So this needs to multiply this and this as well. So the answer here becomes A multiplied by B plus A multiplied by C. That's what I mean. This becomes AB plus AC, right? Similar thing to when you have two brackets, right? A plus B, right, multiplied by C plus D, right? Which is then let me show you this. Just this. So A first multiplies C, and then it goes again to multiply D, and then you go from A, we go to B. B multiplies C first, and then multiplies with D, right? That's what it means. So let's do it. A multiplied by C, it becomes AC. We multiply A by D again, it becomes plus AD, right? Using the sign here, and then using the sign here, B, right? And then we do B multiplied by C, which is BC, and then it's a plus here, right? And then we do B multiplied by D, which is BD, right? This is just simple way to deal with multiplication with brackets, right?